Okay, this is Ken Rosignol with the Chesapeake Today, and I'm here today with Leslie LeDonne. Leslie, you've been a hairdresser for how long?
50 years now.
Okay, when did you first learn about the murder of Henrietta Reagan?
I first heard about her murder in the fall of 1975 when I was in beauty school in Leonardtown.
Okay.
Southern Maryland Beauty Academy.
What were you hearing about that murder? It was 1975. The murder took place in 1959.
Yes, sir.
So were these people you were hearing about your customers?
Well, they were. There were two Leonardtown residents that came in weekly to get their hair done, and they were sitting next to each other. One of the other fellow students was doing one of the ladies, and I was doing the other. And I heard them talk about this horrible homicide that had happened. One of the ladies, and I guess 16 years had passed at that point, but it was still very much on their minds.
What was the type of things they were saying about it?
Well, I heard the one lady say that, oh, that poor woman, they found her laying back on the bed with her throat slit from ear to ear, her eyes were open, hanging off the bed. They never found out who did it. The town, was in an upheaval. We all ran to the stores to get extra locks for our doors. And to that day, they still hadn't had any idea who committed that homicide.
Okay. So it was an unsolved cold case the first time you heard about it?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay. Now when did you start investigating it on your own? When did your curiosity go from beauty shop gossip to actual digging for facts?
40 years later. I never heard the deceased woman's name mentioned when I was in beauty school. It was drilled into our heads then that we were service providers and we were not to interject ourselves into our clients' conversations unless we were invited. And at that point, I wasn't invited, so I didn't ask. They never said her name, of course, because they knew who they were speaking about.
But over the ensuing time period, 40 years later, did you continue to hear about it?
Once in a while I did. Again, I never heard a name mentioned, and I didn't ask. I did hear people talk about her unsolved homicide wrapped into some other unsolved homicides that were here in the county.
Mm-hmm. So this basically was a pretty good cover-up. Would you say that now after investigating it?
This was probably one of the thickest cover-ups.
Okay. Your curiosity was piqued to the point that you decided to undertake a serious investigation and collecting information about it. You've now written a book. It's getting ready to be released on Amazon on November 28th. Okay? And I've read your book, and I would call it one of the most comprehensive and serious investigations into a murder. Okay?
Yes, sir.
The result of your book and the knowledge you've gained and the materials you've collected, is it clear in your mind now? Do you think there's a person that's targeted or persons that would lead anyone to suspect was the killer?
Well,
I mean, there was a killer.
Well, there was a killer. There was a killer, and I do believe that there were many people involved in this cover-up.
Okay, those people who were involved, were they in law enforcement and in charge of the investigations?
Yes, sir, they were.
Okay, and that's a tragedy. It wasn't like the guy down the street that runs a plumbing outfit was suppressing it. It was the people we would expect to expose it.
It was the people that we would expect to protect us from things like that.
And they didn't.
And they did not.
But people went out and bought locks.
They did. They bought locks. They
and the people investigating it. You learned a lot about the sheriff.
I did.
Okay. And the sheriff at the time was Robert Medinsky, and the sheriff in St. Mary's County is elected. What is one of the surprising things that your investigation led to that told you about that sheriff and how he conducted his daily affairs?
Well, I learned that Sheriff Medinsky, a 3-term sheriff, was not able to read or write.
He was illiterate.
He was illiterate.
And the voters of this county picked an illiterate sheriff 3 times.
Yes, sir.
Well, they picked a convicted sex offender for state's attorney here about 5 times, so, you know.
Right, and Mr. Sheriff Medinsky took his wife on all of the calls that he went on with him so that she could write the reports for him.
Okay, well, that's good, all in the family. Was she on the payroll too?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Never saw payroll.
All right. The people involved in the investigation other than the sheriff were the Maryland State Police, the state's attorney, the grand jury. Okay.
Yes.
And you go into all these details in your book.
I do.
Okay. And
we had FBI involved, naval.
Have you ever written a book before?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay. And why did you write this book?
I thought it was the only chance to not only pay homage to this poor woman, Henrietta Reagan, but to expose how deep and how unnecessary something like this is. Keep secrets in town, keep those men that were involved in this in a network that provided like a cover-up for a plethora of events that happened in this.
Would you give a little bit of an introduction into who Henrietta was, her age, and circumstances?
Henrietta was born Henrietta Elizabeth Wilmer. She was born a twin in 1915. She was from a long line of county residents here dating back to the 1600s.
And what was her age at the time of her murder?
She was 44.
Okay.
She had been a new widow by 10 months. She was married at the age of 18 to her first husband, Mr. Love. They were divorced about 2 years later. And then about 17 years before her death, she married her second husband, Pat Reagan.
And where did she live?
She lived on
with
Washington
him?
Street in Leonardtown.
They built a house that year?
They built the house the year that they both died. He passed away in February of 59, and she was murdered in December of 59. Before that, they lived in an apartment building that was family owned, right next to what used to be the Bell Motor Company. It was a Victorian house that had been divided into different apartments. And she lived there with her mom and took care of her mom until her mom died from cancer in 57.
Okay. So she was home alone the night she was murdered, or did she have company?
She had company until 10:30. Her brother-in-law, John Gardner, was there with her. Henrietta was very afraid to stay by herself at night, especially. She didn't like being alone, and since she was a new widow,
and she kept her doors locked?
All the time.
And where did she work?
She worked right across the street at Thrift Oil. She was secretary and bookkeeper for, I think, 17 years for him.
Okay. And who discovered her body?
Mr. Thrift.
And how did he come to do that?
Well, she was supposed to be at work Saturday morning, around 9 o'clock. If she was going to be late or when she was going to be late, she usually always called him and gave him a heads up. That morning, she never showed up at 9, so he waited until 9:30, took a key out of her desk to her door, and walked over. Her back door was open. He knocked, went in, called her name a few times, looked around the house, and then he saw her in bed in a very unnatural position. And
now, your investigation led you to meet and become friends with the young reporter who was on the scene that morning. Her name was Val Himes. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Miss Val, she was the local reporter for the Enterprise.
She was 27 at the time.
She was 27 years old. She was a good friend of Henrietta's. Not in your kitchen all the time having,
Good.
They both worked in Leonardtown. Miss Val at the courthouse being the reporter, and then Henrietta right down the street behind the courthouse at Thrift Oil. So they would meet about once a week for lunch.
Val Himes told you about the nature of Leonardtown to her as a reporter?
Oh, absolutely.
What was that like?
Very difficult for her. She said that she was often, to quote her, she was treated like trash because she was married to a former Navy man. It was very hard for her to dig up information at the courthouse because they viewed her as an outsider. A lot of times she had to piece her stories together by interviewing as many people as she could, going to the courthouse, trying to dig through some files and some stories.
Okay.
But she was definitely not welcome.
And she had the first reports on the murder of Henrietta Reagan.
She did. She was there late morning, early afternoon. She met Lieutenant Smith from the state police there, asked if she was allowed to go in, take a few photographs, which he permitted, and he said, "Don't touch anything." Of course, first thing she did was, with high heels, fell into the refrigerator, so she was worried her fingerprints were all over it. So she did. She covered that story from beginning to as much of the end as she could.
Okay. She passed away last year,
The year before,
2023.
2023.
Okay.
Yes, in August.
And you met with her multiple times?
Oh my God, I can't even count how many times. Yeah, we became very, very good friends.
Okay. There came a time when your investigation into it took a lucky turn, and you had asked the Sheriff's Department, the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Department and the State Police for files and records of this unsolved murder, and they told you what?
There wasn't anything.
So the murder, wait a minute, the murder was never solved, but they told you there wasn't any case file?
They not only said there wasn't any case file, but I don't think they really had any reference to her being a homicide victim or a cold case at all.
So isn't that the complete way to cover up a crime? Is you get rid of the case file,
Get rid of everything.
it doesn't even exist, and then you don't even have in your records that it took place? That's what
Right.
you found?
That's what I found.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Archived newspaper articles. That was about the extent of it.
So your book takes care of that.
It does.
Okay. All right. Thank you. This is Ken Rosignol of the Chesapeake Today with Leslie LeDonne in her beauty shop, talking about her new book, and the name of the book is Killing Henrietta. Comes out on Amazon and paperback. It'll be released November 28th, and it's available for pre-sale now.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.